At the beginning of the third millennium, China finally seems to have emerged from behind its veil. But while legends, myths, and dragons may have flown from the Celestial Empire, this land still holds many mysteries. During an overpowering heat wave, peasants turn over earth so dry that each mound bursts into dust. Little do they know that a lake once covered these fields. And when the water evaporated more than 5 centuries ago, a hidden treasure was left behind, buried under the remaining peat. But the ground can't hold on to its secrets forever. One morning in 1952, shovels dug into the ground more deeply than usual. And after centuries of darkness, small, dark beads were brought up into the light, lotus seeds. They were the seeds of Nelumbu nucifera, the sacred lotus, which has fascinated people in Asia for centuries. Long forgotten at the bottom of a drawer at the Beijing Institute of Botany, these seeds were rediscovered by a woman in 1982. Jane Shen Miller was intrigued by the seed's excellent state of preservation, which inspired her to make a wild hypothesis. Could it be that these seeds might germinate even though they had spent more than 500 years underground? Before going any further, the biologist prepares to perform a dating procedure on the precious relics. But this process will hamper her plans. There are only 7 lotus seeds, and the carbon-14 dating method presents a major disadvantage. The seeds must be burned to be dated. Shen Miller will have to sacrifice 2 of the seeds, but the results are astounding. The oldest seed is 1,288 years old. A 1,000-year-old seed. For the biologist, this is unbelievable. The seed should have rotted and disintegrated a long time ago. Until now, the maximum life expectancy of a seed was thought to be no more than 100 years. Shen Miller pushes the speculation further. These 1,000-year-old seeds might even still be alive. This morning, she is going to the University of California. The biologist goes to work in her laboratory, deserted at this early hour. She employs the same techniques that she used when she first developed her hypothesis. Each seed is weighed and measured before undergoing the decisive test of germination. Will the researchers succeed in awakening these dormant seeds? A fine nick in the husk, followed by a prolonged bath in a large quantity of water, usually activates metabolism. And, indeed, a miracle occurs in Shen Miller's capable hands. A bright green, fragile sprout pierces the shell of the 1,000-year-old seed. The biologist was right. These Chinese seeds are truly eternal.
The thing that we're interested in is what can lotus tell us that it can sprout. For a seed to sprout, it has to correct all the damage or to mend the damage over the years of aging and stress. And how does lotus do it? We do not know. Very little, very little. And maybe that repair mechanism in the lotus, we can tap it and use it to other crops. Our crops, wheat, rice, corn, have a half-life longevity of 5 to 15 years, not hundreds or 1,000 years.
In Kenya, each year, farmers fear that a plague will befall their harvests and destroy the fragile seeds. If the secret of the lotus seed's resistance were understood, people's lives would be revolutionized. Some of the corn has already been ruined by the drought. The harvest will be insufficient to allow them to keep a reserve of seeds for future crops.
The maize crop was not so good because the rain was not good. It was very small, short rain. So we could not get enough maize for this year.
There are no stainless steel silos here to protect the grain from moisture or vermin. This wooden attic provides fragile protection. It might keep the rats away, but it is powerless against the fungus, insects, and parasites that attack the seeds. The lifespan of seeds is generally very limited. Only a few days for cacao seeds, which are moist and incapable of slowing down their physiological development, and approximately 10 years for wheat and cucumber seeds. Corn kernels can sprout for about 2 years. This morning, the peasants take stock of their harvest. In just a few weeks, the inadequate storage conditions have already caused the loss of more than 20% of the kernels. But what if one day a miracle occurred? What if Jane Shen Miller's intuition was correct? If that were the case, the fate of millions of people would be improved because they could apply the lotus's secrets of longevity to other seeds, and famine would decrease. More than 20 years have passed since the awakening of the first 1,000-year-old seed. The lotuses sprouted, then grew as vigorously as those that spring forth from new seeds today. But Shen Miller has not yet solved the mystery of the Chinese seeds. Although the researcher has brought attention and care to her tiny treasures, she knows that her work has only just begun.
I think that lotus captured me. It's so beautiful, and its physiology is so different than other plants. So it's totally absorbing, totally. This one, the China antique, has simple flower, a few petals, and it's pale, pale pink, tipped with dark red. So that wild type is the one that had the longest record of living seeds.
For months now, the scientists' research has been at a standstill. The carbon-14 dating burnt some of the Chinese seeds, and Shen Miller must now find other centenarians, or she will regrettably have to abandon her experiments. But where? In what part of the world can she find other survivors, other eternal seeds? In the university library, Shen Miller hopes to find some clues or some reports of discoveries similar to her own. Among the charts and botanical journals, she finds her first lead. A Japanese botanist by the name of Ichiro Oga. In the 1950s, this scientist made an unusual discovery in the Chiba region. 3 perfectly preserved seeds of Nelumbo nucifera were hidden among the archaeological remains of a canoe under 6 meters of peat. The wood carcass now lies at the Edo-era museum near Tokyo. A dating process has determined the boat to be more than 3,000 years old, the time when the Assyrian Empire had reached the height of its glory. David reigned over Israel, and the ashes of Troy, destroyed by the Greeks, were still smoldering. In the hollow of this dugout, the fragile seeds lay dormant for 3 millennia. Dr. Ichiro Oga has long since passed away, but his nephews, who were children at the time, still remember his discovery.
It's over there, where the small cherry tree is.
No trace remains of the archaeological site where the canoe and seeds were found, but a marker commemorates the extraordinary discovery.
There was a large hole over there. The hole was about
At least 10 meters.
They were removing mud from it. The mud was put in a sieve and water was run through it. They found dozens of seeds. The ones that were rotten or damaged were removed, and those that were unspoiled were kept.
And you, did you help?
No,
I did. But that was 2 days before the seeds were discovered.
I didn't want to because it was full of mud. I did have to go in once, but I wore very tall boots.
In Chiba, Japan, the history of the sacred lotus is engraved in marble, and the flower is somewhat of a celebrity. The lotuses can be found on postage stamps and building facades, and the offspring of these eternal seeds grow in all the gardens. The Nelumbo nucifera has always been revered in Asia. The plant is considered sacred. Unlike other species of the Nymphaceae family, whose leaves and flowers lie on the very surface of the water, this lotus rises 1 to 2 meters above the rest. For millions of people, the lotus symbolizes the flower from which the universe was born. But there are no 1,000-year-old seeds left in Chiba. They will have to be found elsewhere. Nobuhiko Oga pulls out a rare document from archives that he inherited. It is a chart drawn by his uncle in the 1920s.
His research showed that seeds could live for 2,000 years. But my uncle died 37 years ago. I sometimes wonder if he believed that some seeds could in fact live longer, perhaps even for eternity.
The only clue that will make it possible for Shen Miller to find more 1,000-year-old seeds is this land survey charted by Ichiro Oga. It covers the area of a dry lakebed located in the Chinese province of Liaoning.
If the repair mechanism is understood in the lotus, maybe this repair, we can give it to animal and even us human. We age, as I say, we have an average longevity in the United States of 77 years. We want a healthier aging.
All the clues point the biologist to this Palandian lakebed. But she is pessimistic because she already visited the area in 1996 without any luck. However, this area may represent her only hope of finding new seeds. Jane Shen Miller needs support for this journey, the most important of her career. Her husband, William Schopf, is an acclaimed and respected paleobiologist. His skills will be invaluable on this adventure.
with the growth in China, it's going to be really, really difficult because tourism is coming. If it's all built, hotel, say in China, they say tourism is like weeds growing so fast. So I don't have much expectation. Last time we have 6 of us combing bare land. Now it is July. I don't know whether they've grown with crops or buildings or just totally gone.
Shen, Miller, and Schopf head toward Liaoning in northeastern China. The researchers' fears are confirmed. The urban sprawl has been devastating. Concrete has gradually encroached on the fields and may have destroyed Shen Miller's last chances of finding any ancient seeds.
Well, yeah, they're all new. Yeah, everything is new. All this stuff has been built. Oh, that's right. When you first
came, the first afternoon.
That's where you were looking north.
Yeah, looking north.
That's where you were looking north.
So we looked at the river and all these things.
Okay, and so this really is a tributary, probably.
Yeah, this is the second tributary.
This is the middle tributary.
Yeah, second.
Pepe, those are the Curvy Horse Mountains out there. And you can see on this topographic map they're here. So the map would be oriented like this. Now, we are
at this bridge.
We're at this bridge. All this area that I'm outlining now, that was the Lotus Lake. So this would be, that whole area would
4 square kilometers.
4 square kilometers, right.
In this vast parameter spread before them, the couple locates the lakebed site. But with these subdivisions sprawling as far as the eye can see, it's difficult to keep one's bearings.
This sort of place, we could look here in the topsoil. Maybe we'll get lucky.
Yeah.
Feeling skeptical, the biologist scrapes at a few lumps of earth.
Yeah. This is like finding a needle in a haystack, you know?
The chances are slim of finding ancient seeds in soil that has been so often disturbed.
Oh, Liu 老师.
Ah, my goodness gracious.
Having heard of the research undertaken by Jane and her husband, a group of peasants come to meet them. They bring what they believe to be ancient seeds, but the biologist informs them that they are actually new seeds and of no interest. However, these men won't give up. Convinced that they can find older seeds, they begin to dig a large pit.
This is what they found. Oh, 这个土质很好啊。
After hours of labor, they have dug a hole over 2 meters deep.
These are giant steps. Oh.
It is difficult for the biologist's shovel to penetrate the thick layer of peat. The soil refuses to reveal its secrets.
Very difficult. I just don't think the seeds can be so rare in, you know, Bill.
But finally, a seed, smooth and intact, appears on the surface.
I'm going to take a photograph of it. Then I have to measure where it is in the section. And I'll give you those numbers. Then I'm going to take it out and photograph it up there and try to get soil around it. Okay. That's a good picture.
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay, here I go.
This clay tomb has finally offered up its treasure.
Yeah, it looks good. Okay.
Okay, here you can put it on.
Now I want a piece of paper or something. This is a really carbonaceous, organic, rich peat. All right, that's good enough.
Where's the penny?
It's in my pocket.
Oh,
No, I've got that.
Okay.
You can see it's right here. See this? Coming around like that, coming down like that.
A few
That's
minutes
about a
later,
centimeter
the
in
geologist
diameter.
makes a new discovery. Another seed, apparently in perfect shape, is also encased in the heavy, dark soil.
Got it, okay. Okay.
Bill Schopf makes a detailed survey of the various geological layers found in the pit. The composition of the layers immediately reveals that the seeds they have just discovered are at least a few hundred years old. The scientists have accomplished their mission.
That's good.
Don't drop too.
But another surprise awaits the couple. Now that they know how valuable these black beads are to their visitors, the peasants give them handfuls.
Those. You don't want the ones that have brown tips?
Shen Miller knows a simple method for checking the viability of these seeds. All she has to do is plunge them in a bowl of water. The sterile seeds will immediately rise to the surface.
Okay. At least, yeah, 2 of them are not so good. This one floats. Okay, should I take out? Oh yeah, I take out. I just go slowly. Oh, 1 float.
2
floats.
floats. Approximately 80%.
This fail-safe process reveals that few of the seeds are viable because air has penetrated their shells.
16, 17, 18.
I think these are definitely young. The top rows, oat seeds. First of all, shiny. And the nipple is gone. There isn't anything. The bottom row, modern seeds. You see the little nipple is still there. And the whole seed is sort of grayish. It still has the wax. This one has no more wax. You can see the little spot. This morning, the first seed we got is like this.
In a few weeks, the scientists will know for certain if the 2 seeds discovered in this Chinese peat bog are actually eternal seeds. But before her departure, Shen Miller wants to show her husband the distant relatives of the Nelumbu nucifera, cultivated here by Buddhist monks since the 4th century.
Lotus is a plant coming from a very humble origin of the mucky muck, rises high above the water, untainted. That's a symbol of purity in the Buddhist religion. All these lotus were planted by Buddhist monks 1,000 years ago. It is vitality. And then, finally, beauty.
According to the Buddhist religion, this plant is linked to Buddha himself by a sacred bond. Nelumbu nucifera flowers blossomed under each of his steps. In religious representations, Buddha is forever enthroned on this flower, sitting in a posture that symbolizes enlightenment.
There's a romantic feeling about lotus. 2 lovers going apart, they break the lotus. It's like breaking a lotus stem. The 2 parts are broken, but the silk connects the 2 parts. That means they are never apart. They're far away from each other, but the silk still remains.
Shen Miller is haunted by this flower, whose scent and beauty provides endless fascination. But she is also convinced that the properties of Nelumbo nucifera are not just the stuff of legend, and that science still has a lot to learn from this plant.
Water droplets. You see, they collect like a mercury because they have little hair. The water just cleans off the leaves, all the dust, it cleans.
Emerging ever pristine from the dark, muddy depths of the water, the lotus is a symbol of purity throughout Asia. This belief has not escaped the German researcher Wilhelm Barthelot. Intrigued by the legendary cleanliness of the lotus, he decided to study this phenomenon a few years ago. At the University of Bonn Botanical Institute, the botanists' team made an interesting discovery. The leaves of the plant were covered with microscopic bumps that drained away water and dirt. Just like Teflon surfaces, nothing sticks to lotus leaves. Even highly viscous substances like honey can't adhere to the leaf surface.
Everyone prefers surfaces that don't get dirty. It's often thought that a surface must be smooth to be clean, but nature proves that this is not always the case.
In nature, there are numerous examples of surfaces structured according to this principle. This is the case with butterfly wings, or even our hair, which is exposed to dirt and rain.
This is a hydrophobic structure. That is, it repels water. Water drops cannot adhere to this surface. They slide off very quickly, like a toboggan on snow, and take the dirt particles with them. This is the Lotus Effect.
A laboratory test shows the incredible potential of these tiny bumps. A water drop that touches a smooth surface bursts immediately upon contact. But on a lotus leaf, the drop remains intact and hardly seems to touch the surface. This incredible structure is invisible to the naked eye, but the scanning electron microscope reveals thousands of bumps so tiny that next to them an ant would seem gigantic.
If I placed a particle of dirt on this leaf, it would behave like a fakir on a bed of nails. The dust does not really come into contact with the surface. It floats above it and is swept away by water. This is the secret of the Lotus Effect.
Both the strongest glue and even Sudan 3 red pigment, which is used to mark dollar bills that have been stolen, slides off this incredible texture without a trace. The first applications of this process, called the Lotus Effect, were thus born. It was used for containers, coatings, paints, and waxes. But many other applications still remain to be explored. Having returned to Los Angeles, Shen Miller is impatient to test the properties of her new experimental subjects, and she pursues her research. The rhythm of the sacred lotus takes over the biologist's life yet again. This morning, one of the seeds has awoken. But is it really an ancient seed, as the biologist suspects? Shen Miller will have to put her intuition to the test once more. She carefully peels the husk, which will be sent to Livermore near San Francisco to be dated. The seed is preserved. Perhaps in a few months, it will give rise to a Nelumbo nucifera sprout. Here at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, accelerator mass spectroscopy is now used to do the dating. This revolutionary technique has the enormous advantage of requiring very small samples, unlike the traditional method of radioactive counting. From now on, Shen Miller can determine the age of her seeds without sacrificing them. Paula Zermeno has begun an extended and meticulous task. This researcher is responsible for the preparation of the targets, the samples that must be carefully conditioned before being inserted into the accelerator for dating. Not far away at the University of California, Professor Stephen Clark also tries to understand the capacity of particular seeds to survive.
But what we realized was, in the seeds is the kernel of aging for plants. Because what annual plants need to do is they need to grow, they need to make flowers, they need to make seeds, and those seeds are then tossed in the environment. And they have to stay there. And for a plant, seed is really a fetus. It's the equivalent of a human fetus, perhaps at a month or two of development, where that human fetus, instead of staying with the mother for 9 months, after that early development gets wrapped in a hard shell and thrown out in the environment. And that fetus has to survive.
But in the case of the sacred lotus, how does the plant prepare its fetus to survive such a long time in a harsh environment? What clever mechanism has Nelumbo nucifera developed to protect its offspring?
So this is a fruit receptacle. This is the nipple, you see. So this is where the two halves will be meeting. Okay, there are 4 embryonic leaves here in the green part. Grinding up this one embryo, I could do a lot of experiment.
The lotus provides multiple protection layers around its embryo. This strange cone, curiously reminiscent of a watering can nozzle, forms the first envelope for the seeds. Its upper surface is covered with 20 or so cavities, which hold the seeds until they ripen. Then the thick black seed shell takes over and protects them from moisture and light. One might guess that the lotus's secret of longevity simply lies in this exceptional resistance to the wear and tear of time and the elements. But lotus seeds are not the only ones to have a tough shell. Some plants have even stronger ones. The coconut, for example. Battered by marine currents and corroded by salt, the resilient shell protects the sleeping fetus at its center.
So when you look at seeds, there's a growing body in there. And that body has to survive. And so we got very interested in how that survival took place.
The coconut can spend months at sea, protected from the salt water by its special fibrous covering. Having departed from Thailand, this one will cross thousands of kilometers to colonize a beach as far away as Australia. And only when it reaches firm ground will the seed draw from its reserves to germinate. A few months later, roots and leaves will take over to ensure its nourishment. In Livermore, the samples are finally ready, and the mass accelerator can now begin its work. Mikhail Kashgarian must look after this complex, cumbersome, and expensive machine. Massive enough in itself, the accelerator requires many auxiliary rooms, like a control center and maintenance workshops, to ensure the machine's proper functioning. The United States currently has few machines of its kind. Impatient for the results, Shen Miller travels to Livermore. She is nervous and hopes for good news. Her long wait is finally over.
This is just the absolute raw data at this point.
Okay.
And I can tell you that it's older than modern.
Okay.
Probably a few hundred years old at least.
Uh-huh.
And let's see, the age is in radiocarbon years is 440 years plus or minus 40.
Okay. So we will get a age,
Yeah,
right? The biologist likes to know
Did
the
you get
age.
the right age?
Well, let's put it down.
It's, so 573,
573.
525.
And would you do an average?
Okay. 549.
549. Okay. This high age is really impressive. When Christopher Columbus was very active, and Da Vinci in their times, and that's when the Sleeping Beauty finally awakened after 549 years. Right? Impressive!
This time, Shen Miller is sure that the sacred lotus seed has more virtues than just a hardy physical structure. The strength of its shell is not sufficient to explain such longevity. The physiological activity of this lotus has been dormant for more than 500 years, while still retaining the ability to germinate. The biologist is more and more convinced that this ability relates to its unique genetic structure. To prove this theory, Shen Miller has requested the assistance of Stephen Clark, a specialist in the biochemical process of aging.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
How are you?
Nice seeing you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, we just came back from China.
Wonderful.
I think I heard a lecture by a biochemist at UCLA, Steve Clark, that he was looking at some repair enzyme. So I call him up. I say, well, I have this old lotus that, the oldest ever sprouted.
And of course, when we met Jane Shen Miller, then our world changed, and she told us about these wonderful lotus plants and lotus seeds and the fossil lotus seeds she found. And we got so excited about working with her because here were seeds that were up to 1,300 years old.
I'm willing to come and, offer my hands in doing, I've done certain cloning and things on in situ hybridization. So
you're hired.
Okay.
Shen Miller prepares to sacrifice her second seed to the study of the genetic composition of an ancient sacred lotus. First, the researcher must break the seed's hull to extract the embryo. The embryo is then crushed into a fine powder and frozen in liquid nitrogen. The process is painstaking.
In an experimental system, humans aren't the easiest to work with. So we realized that the chemistry of the aging process is the same in any organism, and we could use other organisms to look at the process that would be more experimentally defined. And we got very excited about plants because most people don't think of plants in terms of aging.
Like all living beings, plants also suffer from the ravages of time. Seeds, for example, lose their ability to germinate as the years go by. But sacred lotus seeds seem insensitive to the passage of time.
Lotus in China is regarded as a plant having a full body of treasures, 全身是宝.
Long before Westerners became interested in these seeds, the Asian pharmacopoeia attributed many virtues to them.
Every part of the tissue, the leaves, the stalk, the flower, roots, had been used by barefoot doctors for 4,000 years.
For centuries, hundreds of illnesses have been treated with the lotus's sacred flowers, dried leaves, and seeds, as well as its rhizomes, stems that grow horizontally underground, not to be confused with roots. Long before scientists discovered the ability of Nelumbo nucifera seeds to resist deterioration, traditional doctors prescribed them as a remedy to slow the aging process.
The lotus has so much potential not being tapped that once understood, maybe we can put it to good use. Just look at the soybean in the 60s. When I was eating the soybean, we love soybean fresh. In the 60s, in the United States, it says, soybean is not for human consumption. And look at it now. Everything, soy this, soy that, more milk and pills. So maybe someday we can promote the lotus into beneficial uses.
At the bottom of this lake, a special harvest is being collected. There is no need for scythes or reapers here. The men gather the big, mud-encrusted lotus rhizomes by hand. These tender, slightly sweet tubers are a mainstay of Asian cuisine. The rhizomes must be carefully cleaned and their skin discarded to remove any trace of mud, which would affect their taste. In this factory, workers wearing uniforms fit for astronauts prepare the roots, which will be served raw in salads. The other part of the lotus, such as the flowers and seeds, are also edible. Asian tradition has always made use of this plant's virtues, which have only recently piqued the interest of Western researchers.
Lotus seeds must have something very special. Their biochemistry and their resistance of this chemical aging process must be just fantastic.
After months of study, Professor Stephen Clark's team has made an astonishing observation. In time, all living organisms undergo cellular aging, which involves the accumulation of damaged proteins. Normally, storing seeds increases this protein deterioration and decreases the seed's viability. But Stephen Clark has noted that this is not the case with lotus seeds, which seem to be equipped with a particular mechanism that enables them to repair age-related damage. After many experiments, the biochemist succeeded in identifying the factor responsible for this unusual ability, the L-isoaspartyl methyltransferase enzyme. The sacred lotus of Asia does indeed possess the key to longevity. Jane Shen Miller's efforts have not been in vain. This discovery has suddenly brought great hope to humanity. Found in nature and in humans, this enzyme could indeed offer the gift of longevity to all living beings.
That is a wonderful hope. And the idea then is, here is an organism that can keep an embryo alive for 1,000 years. It's certainly a potential fountain of youth. I mean, and certainly for a lotus plant, it is a fountain of youth because those lotus plants, can survive so long. Now, whether one can translate that lotus fountain of youth into a human fountain of youth is what we're trying to do. And that's where our research is aimed at, of trying to understand what secrets there are in lotus plants that might be translated into humans.
If the repair mechanism is understood in the lotus, perhaps, now this would be a far away in the future, that we may be having, doing genetic engineering. We all share similar gene makeup. It's the control of the gene. When does it turn on? When does it shut off? When it's needed? That sort of the control mechanism in the lotus maybe will improve our own aging.
When Jane Shen Miller and Stephen Clark come to understand the mechanisms of this miraculous, time-resistant enzyme, we can hope to use it to extend our own lives. Already, the complete genome sequence of a small flower, the mouse-ear cress, was determined in the year 2000. It turns out we have more genes in common with plants than we had previously thought. But that is not where Shen Miller is placing her bets. For her, the wager will be won when the ability of the sacred lotus to resist deterioration might be applied to other crops, and world hunger will finally be overcome.